He was supposed to spend the rest of his life in prison after strangling a Vancouver teenager to death in 2005.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Roy Wayne Russell, guilty of the crime of felony murder in the second degree.
I'll never see my daughter again, so I'm just glad that justice was served here.
But now, Roy Russell is getting a new shot at freedom.
I'm appalled, to be very honest with you.
All thanks to a change in Washington law that altered the life sentences of more than 100 criminals.
And so now we're back to he only has 2 strikes. So it's a deplorable thing that the lawmakers did. I don't think they thought it through.
Every single senator who sponsored the bill to make it happen refusing to comment, saying they are just too busy.
Basically let a rapist, murderer, and a really bad person now get set free again.
And this is not the first time Russell has escaped a lifetime prison sentence. Here's the story. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Chelsea Harrison was only 14 years old when Roy Russell suffocated her in his Vancouver apartment. I covered that case back in 2006 when Russell went to trial. I remember it clearly. Here's a clip from our coverage. Roy Russell sat calmly during the penalty phase of his murder trial. He faces life in prison without parole after being convicted of his 3rd felony. Last week, a jury convicted Russell of killing 14-year-old Chelsea Harrison after a party at his home November 1st. Today, her family lashed out at the killer.
Obviously, your sick desire for my daughter was more important than her life, so you beat her and suffocated her.
Regardless, you'll receive your just rewards when you meet your maker. May your days be as miserable as you've made my family since Chelsea's death.
At that time, Russell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole because of a so-called 3 strikes law. Russell was no stranger to law enforcement back then. But in the next few months, he will be resentenced to something less than life and could potentially get out of prison in a few years. Here's Ashley Korsland to explain how that happened.
Happy as a clam, loved everybody, and loved horses.
Even 17 years later, it's still hard for Sylvia Johnson to talk about her granddaughter.
You can't help but cry. Can't help but cry because she was such a beautiful girl and had a heart of gold.
Chelsea Harrison was only 14 years old when she was murdered by 45-year-old Roy Wayne Russell, a vacuum cleaner salesman who was known for hosting underage drinking parties in his Vancouver apartment.
Getting a whole bunch of little kids drunk and stuff. I just didn't want to hang out there.
In November of 2005, Chelsea was at Russell's apartment with a group of teens. Officials say later in the evening, Russell tried to rape Chelsea, but she fought back and Russell killed her.
She was raped, beaten, and strangled to death, and her naked body was dumped upside down in the shower.
Jim Sinescu was the prosecutor on Russell's murder trial in Clark County in 2006. He's now serving as an advocate for Chelsea's family, helping them through the difficult news that Russell may be getting released from prison instead of fulfilling a lifetime sentence.
And the last thing the judge said in the trial was, Mr. Roy Russell, you are a poster boy for an habitual criminal.
And the jury was right to convict you.
Russell's pending release is the aftermath of a bill passed by the Washington legislature last year. It changed the life sentences of more than 100 prisoners.
We're still processing the fact that all this work and effort and tears and blood and sweat that it took to get some justice for Chelsea is just getting tossed asunder.
It started in 2019 when lawmakers took up the state's 3 strikes law, which generally mandates a life sentence after a 3rd violent felony. Legislators removed second-degree robbery as a strike for future offenders. Then, in the spring of 2021, amid fierce debates on policing and criminal justice reform, lawmakers made the change retroactive, allowing as many as 114 inmates who had second-degree robbery as a strike, like Russell, to be resentenced to something less than life in prison.
I'm appalled, to be very honest with you.
But this isn't the first time Russell has escaped a life sentence. His criminal history is long and dates back to the 1980s. Over the decades, he's been sentenced for a variety of crimes, including armed robbery, felony theft, kidnapping, and arson. In 1998, Russell was sentenced to his first life sentence, also based on Washington's three strikes law. But he appealed the sentence, and in 2001, a judge ruled that his conviction for kidnapping in Arizona did not qualify as a strike under Washington law. His life sentence was lifted, and Russell was eventually released from prison.
He got out just in time for him to meet Chelsea Harrison.
Not long after, he strangled Chelsea.
The bill closes a loophole in our three strikes law and is named the Chelsea Harrison Act.
After the murder, Washington passed the Chelsea Harrison Act, which closed the loophole that allowed Russell to escape his original lifetime sentence. The bill expanded Washington law to include felony convictions from other states.
God bless you.
God bless you.
It was an effort to keep a similar situation from happening again to another family.
And it's one of the most rewarding days that our family could ever experience. It truly is.
But then, the 2021 law making the retroactive change to the three strikes law upended everything for Chelsea's family. Russell would now escape a life sentence for a second time.
What was your reaction when you were informed about this resentencing and about this three strike situation happening a second time?
Absolutely enraged. Absolutely enraged. I was so angry.
And so now we're back to he only has 2 strikes. So it's a deplorable thing that the lawmakers did. I don't think they thought it through.
We reached out to 7 of the Democratic senators who sponsored Senate Bill 5164 in 2021. Some either didn't respond to our multiple requests for comment or stated they were too busy for an interview. A communications officer told us one senator was too busy campaigning ahead of the November election and to check back in a few months. And a few recommended we talk with the prime sponsor of the bill, former Senator Jeannie Darneal. She now works for the Washington Department of Corrections. Darneal also declined to give a comment for our story. This lack of response or accountability from lawmakers is maddening for Chelsea's family and former prosecutor Sinescu.
I want to know, did they just miss this? Or did they know they were going to set a serial criminal free like this? Had we known that 16 years later they were going to change the law and change the rules, we would have charged the case differently.
Russell is now 61 years old. Since his arrest in 2005, he's always denied killing Chelsea.
No, I did not kill Chelsea.
That is, until he learned about his chance of freedom. In recent court filings, Russell admitted to murdering her and that Chelsea's death still haunts him. But he argues he's a changed man and wants to be free to build a life for himself and his family. Russell also says he is no longer a, quote, scumbag criminal.
She's dead, and we've got somebody that shouldn't be out of jail because he is anything but a good citizen. And now, hey, he's found another little loophole.
As part of his pending resentencing, Russell's original charge of second-degree murder comes with a range of 21 to 30 years. He'll get credit for about 16 and a half years already served. That means Russell could be released anywhere between 4 and 14 years from now, or even sooner if he gets credit for good behavior in prison. The Clark County Prosecuting Attorney's Office says it'll pursue the maximum sentence. Ultimately, it'll be up to a Clark County judge.
Every single person has been in shock that this could happen. Basically, let a rapist, murderer, and a really bad person now get set free again.
For Chelsea's family, the thought of her killer getting another chance at freedom is inconceivable.
I'm assuming you'll be pushing for the strongest possible sentence, but is that enough for you?
No, it isn't. The strongest sentence is not enough for me.
Ashley joins us now, and I know you tried to contact Russell's attorney. In fact, you did, but she wouldn't comment for this. So what's going on with his resentencing?
So as of this point, it's set for mid-October. Chelsea Harrison's grandmother and mother, they will be flying up from California, and they'll be right back in that courtroom facing Russell again.
Going to have to go through that whole nightmare all over again. And I know that you tried to contact several prison groups or organizations involved in this to get their input. How'd that go?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to get that perspective on prison reform, right? It's a very political topic, but it's also an important topic to this story because there's a whole other perspective that we should be reforming life sentences and different things. And so I reached out to the ACLU, the Freedom Project, and the Washington Defender Association, and none of them wanted to be tied to this topic, to this story. They didn't want to give any comment. And so, you know, Pat, when you have all of the senators involved in this legislation refusing to comment or even call me back, they don't want to be associated. We did our due diligence to try to get that perspective, and none of those groups responded. Well,
and it is an interesting effort to try and bring justice to maybe people who got a life sentence for something that maybe was not all that serious in the scheme of things.
Right.
And certainly they don't want this guy to be their poster boy.
Sure, you bet. And that's, I think, where the holdup is with them not wanting to comment or be associated at all.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ashley. Great reporting as always.